My twin sister stole my remote job identity, so I logged into her dating profile at the family dinner. The Ring doorbell camera caught everything. My mother standing on the porch, her face twisted in that particular way she gets when she's about to deliver a loving intervention. My sister Jade, frozen mid-step, her hand hovering over the doorknob. And me, watching it all from my phone, 3,000 miles away, because I'd been exiled from the family group chat for being too negative. The camera didn't capture the audio, but I didn't need it. I knew exactly what my mother was saying. I'd heard that speech 100 times. We're just worried about you, sweetheart. You've changed. The thing is, I hadn't changed. I'd just stopped performing. I'd stopped pretending that our family was a sitcom, where everyone hugged it out at the end. And for that, apparently, I was the villain. But I had the recordings, all of them, and I was done keeping secrets. My mother, Veronica, is a content creator. That's what she calls herself now. She used to be a high school English teacher, but 3 years ago, she quit to start a podcast called Table Talk, a raw, unfiltered look at modern motherhood. The irony is that nothing about our family is raw or unfiltered. Everything is curated, edited, and optimized for engagement. My mother has turned our dysfunction into a side hustle, and my sister, Jade, is her co-host. Jade is 31, the golden child, the one who stayed in our hometown of Boulder, Colorado, while I fled to Austin the second I could afford a one-way ticket. Jade is a Pilates instructor with a fiancé named Derek, who works in tech, and a rescue dog named Mochi. She has the aesthetic down. The neutral-toned apartment, the matching loungewear sets, the weekly farmers market hauls on Instagram stories. She's the daughter my mother actually wanted, compliant, photogenic, and willing to air our family's dirty laundry for a modest Patreon following. Then there's me, Nora, the difficult one, the one who moved away, who writes dark, sad essays about trauma, my mother's words, who refuses to appear on the podcast. I work freelance, stringing together copywriting gigs and the occasional magazine pitch. My apartment is small, my furniture is IKEA, and my life is messy. And apparently that makes me the problem. The tension started about 6 months ago, when my mother launched a new podcast series called The Estranged Child. It was supposed to be about understanding why adult children cut ties with their parents. But episode after episode, it became increasingly clear that she was talking about me. She never used my name, but she used enough details. The time I dyed my hair purple in high school, my difficult phase after my dad left, my decision to skip last Thanksgiving because I had work. Some children just can't accept love, she said in episode 4, her voice dripping with performative sadness. They build walls. They push people away, and as mothers, we have to learn to let go, even when it breaks our hearts. I listened to that episode while eating ramen in my tiny Austin kitchen, and I felt something snap. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. I realized that my mother wasn't telling stories about me. She was mining me for content. My pain was her product, and my sister Jade was her co-producer. The first real confrontation happened over FaceTime. My mother called to check in, which is code for gather material for the next episode. So, she said, leaning into the camera with that faux sympathetic smile. How are you really doing, honey? I feel like you've been distant lately. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy. Busy is a defense mechanism, she said, practically salivating. Tell me what's really going on. Are you struggling? Financially? Emotionally? I watched Jade appear in the background of the frame, pretending to rearrange a throw pillow but clearly listening. That's when I realized they were probably recording, not professionally, just on my mother's phone. It was a technique they'd admitted to before, capturing authentic moments for the podcast. I'm not struggling, I said flatly. I'm just not interested in being a guest on your show. My mother's smile flickered. No one said anything about the show, sweetheart. I'm just being a mother. Are you? Because it feels like you're interviewing me. Jade stepped into frame, all concern and neutrality. Nora, no one's trying to upset you. We're just worried. You've been so defensive lately. Defensive, I repeated. Right, because I don't want my breakdowns turned into monetized content. That's when the mask slipped, just for a second. My mother's eyes hardened. You know, Nora, some of us actually work hard to build something. We're not all lucky enough to sit around writing depressing essays no one reads. I ended the call. Then I opened my voice notes app and started recording everything. Every call, every text, every passive-aggressive group message. I wasn't being petty. I was building a case, because I knew that my mother was going to make me the villain of her next season, and I was not going down without a fight. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. I was scrolling through my mother's public Instagram, the one with 40,000 followers, when I saw it, a screenshot of a private text message from me. I'd sent it months ago, in a moment of weakness, confessing that I'd started seeing a therapist. My mother had posted it with the caption, "When your child finally accepts help, the journey of healing begins. A table talk. Mom life." She didn't even blur my name. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. That message wasn't content. It was vulnerable. It was private, and she just handed it to the internet like it was her story to tell. I called Jade, not to fight, just to ask her why. Why did they keep doing this? Why was my pain just a prop for their little empire? Jade answered on the third ring. Nora, I can't do this right now. Why did she post my message? Silence, then a sigh. Look, Mom was just trying to show how proud she is. She wasn't proud. She was exploiting me. And you let her. Nora, you're being dramatic. No one even knows it's you. Your name isn't on it, but I know, Jade, I know. And you know. And that should be enough. She didn't have an answer for that. She just muttered something about not wanting to get in the middle and ended the call. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story, edit my grief, and package my pain for public consumption. I had months of recordings. I had screenshots. I had everything, and I was going to use it. But not yet. First, I needed to wait. I needed to let them dig their own graves. Because my mother had a new project coming up, a live podcast recording at a local theater in Boulder, and she'd invited the whole family. Everyone except me, or so she thought. The day of the live podcast recording, Jade woke up with a knot in her stomach so tight she couldn't eat breakfast. Derek kept asking if she was okay, and she kept saying yes, even though they both knew it was a lie. Mochi curled up on her lap, sensing her anxiety, and she sat there in her perfectly neutral-toned living room, surrounded by the life she'd carefully constructed, and she felt like she was suffocating. She was the good one, the one who stayed, the one who plays by the rules. And she was about to sit on a stage while her mother publicly dissected her sister's private life for 300 paying strangers. The venue was a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of place that screams authenticity while charging $40 a ticket. Jade arrived early to help set up, because that's what she did. She helped. She smoothed things over. She smiled and nodded and kept the peace. It was exhausting, but it was the role she'd been assigned. Her mother, Veronica, was already backstage, her face a mask of stage-ready serenity. She wore a cream-colored blazer and gold hoop earrings, her hair perfectly blown out. She looked like she was about to accept an award, not have a conversation about family trauma. Jade, darling, there you are, she said, air kissing her cheek. You look pale. Have you eaten anything? I'm fine, Mom. Stress is good, she said, adjusting her microphone pack. Stress means you care. Channel it? Jade wanted to scream at her. She wanted to say, I'm stressed because you're about to humiliate my sister on a stage. But she didn't. She never did. Instead, she helped arrange the chairs. She checked the audio levels. She did her job. The audience filed in slowly, a sea of middle-aged women in floral blouses and sensible shoes. They were Veronica's people. They nodded along, held journals, and wrote down takeaways like they were attending a self-help seminar. They'd paid to watch the family bleed, and they didn't even know it. Veronica opened with a monologue about the complexity of mother-daughter relationships. The audience laughed in all the right places. Jade sat on a stool beside her, her hands clasped in her lap, her smile frozen in place. And then she went for it. I want to talk tonight about estrangement, she said, her voice dropping to that faux vulnerable register she uses for dramatic effect. About the children who leave and the parents who love them anyway. The audience leaned in. Jade felt her heart rate spike. I have a daughter who's chosen to distance herself, Veronica continued, and I've had to make peace with that. I've had to accept that love sometimes means letting go. She didn't say Nora's name. She didn't have to. Everyone who followed the podcast knew. They'd piece it together from the details, the hints, the carefully constructed breadcrumbs. Jade sat there frozen, while her mother told a story about Nora's difficult phase. She talked about how hard it was to watch her child push everyone away. She cried on cue, a single tear sliding down her cheek, and the audience applauded. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. She was a prop in her sister's public execution, and she was too scared to stop it. After the show, Jade found a quiet corner near the bathrooms and opened her phone. Her hands were shaking. She pulled up Nora's contact, her thumb hovering over the call button, and then her mother appeared. Jade, what are you doing back here? She asked, her voice light. People want to meet you. Come take photos. I can't, Mom. I need a minute. Veronica studied her face, her expression hardening. You're not going to call her, are you? Jade didn't answer. Nora made her choice, Veronica said, her voice suddenly cold. She chose to leave. She chose to be difficult. You need to focus on what we're building here. This is your future too, and there it was. The thing Jade had known for years but never admitted to herself. Her mother saw her as a co-conspirator, not a daughter. She was an asset, a co-host, a brand extension. She nodded, put her phone away, and went to take the photos. She smiled until her cheeks hurt. She told everyone how proud she was of her mother. She performed. But that night, when Derek was asleep and Mochi was curled at her feet, she opened her laptop and listened to the voice messages Nora had left her over the past 6 months. She'd never listened to them before. She'd deleted them without hearing, because listening meant acknowledging that her sister was right, and she wasn't ready for that, but now she was. The first message was quiet, almost timid. Hey Jade, it's me. I know we haven't talked in a while. I just wanted to say, I miss you. Not the podcast version of you, the real you. The one who used to sneak me snacks when Mom put me on a diet. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Jade felt the tears coming before she could stop them. She remembered that. 8th grade, her mother decided she was too soft and put her on a regimen. Nora used to hide granola bars in her backpack for her. She was always the protector. Across the country in Austin, Nora didn't sleep the night of the podcast. She'd watch the live stream from her apartment, curled up on her IKEA couch with a glass of cheap wine, and a rage so deep it felt like nausea. The thing about her mother is that she's genuinely talented. She knows how to craft a narrative. She knows how to make herself sympathetic, even when she's doing something monstrous. By the end of the show, half the chat comments were about what a brave mother she was, how inspiring it was to see her vulnerability. Nobody mentioned Nora. Nobody defended her. Because she wasn't a person to them, she was a plot point. She replayed the last part of the live stream where her mother talked about letting go. She mentioned, without naming her, that her estranged daughter had recently started therapy. She framed it as a victory for healing. She made it sound like Nora's breakdown was her success story. Nora opened her folder of evidence. She'd been collecting screenshots for months. Every time her mother posted something passive-aggressive, every time her sister enabled her, every voice note, every text, every moment of weaponized concern. She started uploading them to a private Google Drive. She didn't know what she was going to do with them yet, but she wanted them ready. She wanted the power. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. It was Jade. "Hey," she said. Her voice was different, softer. "I watched the live stream." "Then you know what she did." "I know." "I was there." "Right, you were there." "On stage." Smiling. Jade went quiet. Then, "I'm sorry." It was so simple, so unexpected that Nora didn't know how to respond. Jade was never the one to apologize. She was the one who rationalized, who explained away, who asked for understanding. "I've been thinking," Jade continued, "about the voice notes you left. I didn't listen to them before. I couldn't, but I did tonight. And you were right. About everything. She's been using us. Both of us. I just didn't want to see it because she gave me a purpose. She made me feel like I mattered. And I thought if I stepped away, I'd lose everything." Nora sat down on her kitchen floor, the phone pressed to her ear. This was the Jade she remembered, the one who snuck snacks, who cried at sad movies, who used to braid her hair when they were kids. "You won't lose everything," she said. "You'll just lose the fake parts. The part that smiles for the camera. The part that performs. Can you come home?" Jade asked, her voice cracking. "Not for her. For me. I need to see you. I need to remember who I was before all of this." Nora hesitated. Going back to Boulder meant entering the lion's den. It meant facing her mother, facing the audience, facing everything she'd spent 3 years running away from, but it also meant her sister. Her real sister, the one who'd been buried under 2 years of content creation and co-hosting responsibilities. "I'll come," she said, "but I'm bringing my laptop." Veronica thought she was untouchable. She'd built an empire on vulnerability, on truth-telling, on the illusion of authenticity. She'd monetized her children's pain, and no one had ever called her out on it. But she was about to learn a very modern lesson. On the internet, everyone leaves a trace. Nora didn't tell her mother she was coming. She just showed up at her house on a Sunday morning, Jade by her side, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder. Veronica opened the door, her face cycling through surprise, confusion, and a very brief flash of panic before settling into that mask of maternal warmth. "Nora," she said, opening her arms for an embrace. What a wonderful surprise. Nora didn't hug her. She walked past her into the house and set her laptop on the kitchen island, the same kitchen where Veronica had recorded dozens of podcast episodes, the same counter where she'd arranged her microphones and her notepads, and her carefully selected inspirational decor. "Mom, we need to talk," Jade said, stepping inside. "Really talk. What's this about?" Veronica asked, her voice light. "Are you girls finally ready to collaborate?" "No, Mom," Nora said. "We're not." She opened her laptop and pulled up a folder labeled Evidence. She clicked play on the first file. It was a recording of their FaceTime conversation from 3 months ago. Veronica's voice filled the kitchen. "Are you struggling? Financially? Emotionally?" Then Nora's voice. "I'm just not interested in being a guest on your show. No one said anything about the show, sweetheart." Then Jade. "We're just worried. You've been so defensive lately." Veronica's face went pale. "What is this?" "This is you," Nora said, clicking play on the next file. "And this and this. Every time you talked to me. Every time you pretended to be a concerned mother while actually mining me for content. I recorded all of it." "You recorded me?" she whispered, her eyes wide. That's illegal." "It's legal in Colorado, actually. One-party consent." "I checked." Veronica turned to Jade. "You knew about this?" Jade shook her head. "I didn't know about the recordings, Mom, but I knew what you were doing. And I'm done pretending I didn't." Nora clicked another file. This one was audio from the podcast live stream with a side-by-side transcript of the text message she'd posted without permission. "You posted my private therapy confession," she said. "You didn't even blur my name. You handed my vulnerability to 40,000 strangers for engagement. That was different." Veronica stammered. I was trying to show how proud I am. You were trying to show off. You were trying to get downloads. You were using me. The mask dropped completely. Veronica's face hardened into something rare. Pure, unfiltered anger. You think you can threaten me? She hissed. I have a platform. I have followers. I have a whole community who thinks I'm the victim. If you try to expose me, I'll destroy you both. I'll say you're mentally unstable. I'll say Jade was coerced. I'll ruin everything you've built. And there it was, the truth. Veronica wasn't a creator. She was a destroyer. You're right, Nora said calmly. You could do all of that. But here's the thing, Mom. I have years of evidence. Years, and I'm not the only one. She pulled up the final file. It was a video she'd taken the night before, the one she'd asked a friend to record at the podcast venue. Audience members leaving the show talking amongst themselves. I don't know, one woman said. I felt like she was being a bit harsh on her daughter. The whole estrangement thing seemed kind of one-sided, another agreed. Like, where's the other perspective? Veronica watched. Her jaw tight, her hands clenched at her sides. The public is turning, Nora said softly. People are starting to see through the performance. And when I post everything I have, they'll see the whole story, not the edited version. Not the version that makes you the hero. The real one, Jade stepped forward. We're giving you a choice, Mom. You cancel the podcast. You delete the episodes that mention Nora. And you stop using our lives as content. And if I don't, Nora closed her laptop. Then I release everything. All the recordings. All the screenshots. The conversations where you coached Jade on what to say. The texts where you told me I was too dramatic for therapy. All of it. You'll be the villain of your own story. The kitchen was silent. The grandfather clock ticked. Outside, a car drove past, its bass thumping faintly. Veronica stared at her daughters, her eyes cold, calculating. She was already plotting, she knew. Already strategizing. Already figuring out how to spin this. But they had something she'd never had, the truth. And that was the most dangerous weapon of all. For 3 days after the confrontation, Veronica didn't sleep. She lay in her perfectly curated bedroom, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word her daughters had thrown at her like weapons. The recordings, the screenshots, the threat of exposure. Her own children holding a digital sword to her throat. She'd built this empire from nothing. When Richard left, she was a high school teacher with 2 daughters, a mortgage, and a pension that wouldn't cover half their expenses. She turned pain into profit. She made vulnerability into a brand, and she was proud of it. Proud of the 40,000 followers, the sponsored posts, the speaking engagements. Proud that she'd carved out a space for herself in a world that had tried to diminish her. But pride, she was learning, was a very lonely bedfellow. On the 4th morning, she got up at 5 a.m., made her coffee, and opened her laptop. She stared at her podcast dashboard, the analytics, the comments, the steady stream of downloads that had become her validation, her identity, her everything. And then she opened the folder Nora had given her access to. The evidence folder. It was an olive branch, Nora had called it. But Veronica knew it was a leash. Her daughter wanted her to see exactly what she had on her. Every recording, every screenshot, every carefully documented moment of manipulation. She scrolled through them, her stomach churning. There was the FaceTime where she'd asked about Nora's finances, her voice dripping with false concern. There was the text where she'd coached Jade on how to handle Nora's outbursts. There was the private message she'd posted without permission. Her daughter's vulnerability turned into content. She saw herself through their eyes for the first time, and she didn't recognize the woman in those recordings. She was hungry, desperate, willing to sacrifice anyone for a few more likes. She closed the laptop and sat in the silence of her kitchen. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the floor. Mochi, Jade's dog, padded over and rested her head on her knee. Even the dog, she thought bitterly, was more forgiving than her daughters. That afternoon, Jade came over alone. No laptop, no recording devices, just her, in an oversized sweater, her face bare of makeup, looking younger and more vulnerable than Veronica had seen her in years. Mom, we need to talk, she said, sitting across from her at the kitchen island. We talked. You and your sister made your position very clear. That wasn't a real conversation. That was an ambush. And I'm sorry it happened that way. I should have come to you alone first. Veronica blinked. This was not the Jade she expected. Not the compliant one, not the co-host, not the performer. This was her daughter, the one she used to read bedtime stories to. The one who cried when she scraped her knee. The one who'd once asked her in the small voice of a child, Mommy, do you love me more than the podcast? Do you remember that question? Veronica asked softly. When you were little, you asked if I loved you more than the podcast. Jade's eyes widened. I remember. I didn't answer. I changed the subject because I didn't know how to say that I was terrified. Terrified of being a nobody. Terrified of being just a single mom with a teacher's salary. Terrified that without the podcast, I was nothing. Jade reached across the counter and took her hand. You're not nothing. You never were nothing. But you made us feel like we were just content. Like we didn't matter outside of what we could give you. Veronica opened her mouth to argue, to defend herself, to explain, but no words came, because Jade was right. She'd done exactly that. She'd turned her daughters into characters in her story, and she'd forgotten they had stories of their own. I've canceled the podcast, she said, the words tasting foreign on her tongue. All of it. The live shows, the next season, everything. I already emailed my team. Jade's face shifted from wariness to surprise. You did? The recordings. They made me see myself. And I didn't like what I saw. She laughed, a hollow sound. Your sister was right. I was exploiting you. Both of you. And I was so desperate to be seen that I stopped seeing anyone else. Jade didn't cry when her mother said she'd canceled the podcast. She wanted to. She felt the tears building behind her eyes, hot and prickly. But she'd spent so many years performing emotions for the camera that she no longer trusted her own feelings. Was she really relieved? Or was she just reacting the way she was supposed to? She'd been the daughter who smoothed things over for so long that she'd forgotten how to just feel. Every conflict was a negotiation. Every emotion was a data point. Her mother taught her that. She'd taught her that feelings were tools to be wielded, not experiences to be lived. But sitting there in her mother's kitchen, watching her unravel, she felt something real, something messy and complicated and human. Mom, I don't think I can forgive you yet, she said carefully. I think I need time, and I think I need you to actually do the work, not just cancel the podcast, not just say sorry, but actually change. I know, Veronica said. I know. I've already found a therapist. A real one, not one who will go on my show. I'm going to figure out why I became this person. The person who needed validation more than she needed her children. That was more than Jade had ever expected. More than she'd ever allowed herself to hope for. She pulled out her phone and texted Nora. She's actually trying. I think she's serious. Nora's reply came fast. I'll believe it when I see it. But I'm glad you're okay. Her sister was still guarded, still hurt, and she had every right to be. Their mother had used her most vulnerable moments as entertainment. She'd weaponized Nora's therapy, her struggles, her pain. That kind of betrayal didn't heal overnight, but maybe, just maybe, it could heal. Nora didn't fly back to Boulder immediately. She needed space. She needed to process. Trusting her mother again felt like stepping onto a frozen lake. One wrong move and everything would shatter. But Jade kept her updated. Hourly texts, voice notes, even a few video calls. She was like a field reporter, documenting their mother's slow, awkward transformation. She cried, Jade reported on day 5. Real crying, not the podcast crying, the ugly kind. Let me guess. She wants me to fly home so we can have a healing moment for the new season. No, she doesn't want that. She said she doesn't deserve it. She said she needs to prove herself first. Nora was silent for a moment. That was unexpected. Her mother had always been good at words, but she'd never been good at silence. She'd never been good at waiting. I'll come home, she said finally. But not for her. For you. I need to see you. In person, without a camera. The flight to Boulder was 3 hours. She spent most of it staring out the window, watching the mountains grow closer, feeling a strange mix of dread and hope. She was returning to the place she'd fled, returning to the mother who'd hurt her, returning to the sister she'd nearly lost. Jade picked her up at the airport. She wore no makeup, her hair in a messy bun, her clothes rumpled. She looked like a real person. Not a content creator. She looked like her sister. You look terrible, Nora said, hugging her. You look worse. Jade laughed. It's good to see you. They drove to their mother's house in silence. The streets were familiar. The coffee shops, the parks, the bike paths. Nora had spent 18 years here, and she'd spent 3 years pretending it didn't exist. But it did. It always did. Veronica was waiting on the front porch. No camera, no microphone, no crew. Just her, in jeans and a faded sweater, her face lined with exhaustion. I don't expect anything, she said, as Nora got out of the car. I just want to say I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right if you let me. Nora stood there, frozen. She had so much anger inside her, so much pain. But she also had something else. Something she'd forgotten she possessed. Hope. I can't promise anything, she said, but I'm here. That's a start. They sat in the backyard that afternoon, the same yard where they'd had barbecues, birthday parties, family dinners. The grass was overgrown, the rose bushes wild. Veronica hadn't been keeping up with the yard. She'd been too busy trying to rebuild herself. I sold the rights to the podcast, she said, breaking the silence. Not for much, but I wanted to get rid of it. I don't want that part of my life anymore. What will you do? Jade asked. Without it? I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to teaching. Or maybe I'll just be a mom. I never really did that properly. I was always too busy being a brand. And then, for the first time in as long as any of them could remember, Veronica laughed. Not the polished, performative laugh she used in interviews, a real, genuine, slightly self-deprecating laugh. I'm so sorry for what I did, she said, looking at both of her daughters. I don't have the words. I don't have the excuse. Stop, Nora said. Stop apologizing, just be different. That's all I need. Months passed. Nora didn't move back to Boulder. She loved her little apartment in Austin too much, but she started visiting more. Every month, she'd fly home for a long weekend. Jade and she would go to the farmer's market. They'd cook dinner together. They'd talk about everything and nothing. Veronica got a job at a local community college teaching creative writing. She hated the pay, but she loved the work. She said it reminded her why she'd started in the first place. Not for the followers, for the stories She never started a podcast again. She didn't need to. She'd finally realized that her story didn't need an audience. It just needed to be lived. The family group chat, which had once been a minefield of passive aggression, became a place for jokes, cat photos, and recipes. They argued sometimes, normal arguments, the kind that end in laughter, not threats. And Nora started writing again. Not the dark, traumatic essays she'd been producing. Something lighter. Something truer. She wrote about the woman who taught her how to bake. The sister who snuck her snacks. The mother who finally learned that love wasn't content. The day Veronica's first class started, she texted her daughters a photo of herself standing in front of a whiteboard. She was smiling. Not her podcast smile. Her real one. "Wish me luck," she wrote. "Break a leg," Jade replied. "You'll be amazing," Nora added. "Just don't record it." Veronica sent back a laughing emoji. A real one. No filters, that was enough. That was everything.